Cleveland! Welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast, where we explore our shared love for watching and discussing movies recorded in the late after-work hours, often in lieu of a good night's rest. I'm Julian.
I'm Madeline.
And I'm Emilio. The three of us are colleagues at a Midtown Manhattan music school. Yes, music is what brings us together, but movies are what keep us together, talking at the end of the night. So we've created some order to this ongoing trend by recording these conversations, considering an overarching theme while we cycle through 5 unique guidelines for engagement.
You can email us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. Seriously, we'd love to hear from you, and you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok for updates, highlights, clips, and other visual supplements to the audio we record at Sleepless Cinematic Pod.
In addition to these main episodes, we record and release bonus one-off episodes as we see fit. While we do this, you, the listener, can count on the three of us doing what we've grown to love, forgoing sleep for a discussion about movies every other week.
And this week, we continue our current cycle of movies related to musicians on film with a category we call Suggestion Box, where one of us elects a film for the group to discuss. At least one of us will be seeing this movie for the first time, and differing opinions may or may not be held among us. And that movie this week is the one, the only. This is Spinal Tap.
I'm so excited. So excited. This
think
movie's awesome.
Arguably the greatest mockumentary ever made. Trailblazer for many films that came after it.
Yeah.
Epitome of music in the documentary, this even if a pseudo style, still the kind of documentary format. Truly a revolutionary movie, one that I love dearly. But let's talk about who is seeing this for the first time here.
That's me. Shock. And I don't really know why it took me a long time to see this movie. I mean, today I told many people that this is the movie we were going to cover here at our Midtown Manhattan Music School. And obviously everybody I talked to was like, oh my goodness, what an amazing movie. It was so influential on me. You know, when you talk to a bunch of rockers for 8 hours, that's the response that you're going to get to this movie. And I totally see that. I completely understand why this is so influential on people. And I'm very happy to talk about it. Very glad to have finally seen it.
Yeah. Did any of you guys actually think Spinal Tap was a real band ever?
Well, I mean, because of the movie, they kind of are.
That's true.
Yeah.
I know, but like outside of the fact that this film was made, right?
Yeah.
Did any of you guys actually? Because for a little while when I was a kid, I remember seeing some of the publicity photos that they have, and I kind of thought that they were a real band.
I feel like closer to the time that this came out and maybe in the subsequent couple of decades, that definitely could have been the case.
Yeah.
I think by the time I was old enough to have heard anything about the band, I had heard about the movie already. So
Right.
they went kind of hand in hand for me.
Right. My dad loves this movie, and so I think the moment I expressed any interest in music, he would bring this movie up quite a bit. So we'll get into that in a sec.
That's a pretty good setup for my introduction to it, which was that I was introduced to it by my parents as well. And so I didn't really have that phase of believing independently of the movie that they were a real band, real in quotation marks. So it was a parentally conditioned movie for me. And basically, when I started playing guitar and my parents knew I was seriously interested in music, they basically said, I literally remember an occasion where they said, he's ready.
I love that.
Nice.
Yeah,
we can do this.
Not the only time they've done that with a movie for me. Like, not verbatim, but when they showed me all the Coen brothers movies, it was a similar thing. It felt like a rite of passage.
Yeah.
Before we get very deep into this discussion, though, we should clarify, This is Spinal Tap is not to be confused with films such as This Is the End.
Oh, true.
Which is the Judd Apatow-produced apocalypse comedy from 2013, starring, among others, Jonah Hill, Jay Baruchel, Craig Robinson.
All those guys, yeah.
A movie that I strongly dislike, and I think I've said on this podcast that I strongly dislike. But I think it's also one of those movies that when you watch it with like an ex and you associate it with that person, it just like it kind of sours it for you.
Yeah.
Especially if that ex liked it a lot.
Exactly.
Okay.
That was
Yeah.
the issue.
Yeah,
There's some people in that movie who are kind of exes of the film industry, too.
Yeah, they could say that.
Yeah.
I would also say that we should not confuse this film with the movie 300, which has lived on for a very authoritative quote that I think that movie's best known for, which is, "This is Sparta."
That was great.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yes.
So we're not talking about 300. We're talking about This Is Spinal Tap.
You didn't do the kick that follows.
That's true. No, if I did that,
he did do the kick, everyone.
Speaking of things that you the listeners can't see but have to believe, I am dressed for this occasion.
We're gonna definitely take a picture of that for the socials.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm wearing Nigel Tufnell's green skeleton shirt right now as we record this.
Quite nice. Although you've not cut off the sleeves.
No, I haven't done that yet.
Yeah. I tried to dress for the occasion. I'm wearing my Famous Guitars t-shirt that has a bunch of different guitars on the back.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is reminiscent of Nigel's guitar collection.
Supplied by Norman's Rare Guitars, by the way.
Exactly.
Yeah. One with the old tagger on it.
Yeah. And Emilio, I know you've said you've in the past owned this exact shirt.
I have. That's true, but I'm not wearing it today. I did not come dressed, but I hopefully came prepared in other ways.
I mean, he's dressed, just not in
you
that.
are dressed.
That's true.
Just not in that kind of clothing.
That's true.
But going back, this movie is also not to be confused with Zombieland Double Tap, which is not a movie I've seen. I've seen the first Zombieland and not get around to the sequel.
Yeah. Should not be confused with the film Taps, by the way, which the band in this film, this is Spinal Tap, refers to themselves as. Taps, which is the 1981 drama starring Timothy Hutton, Sean Penn, and a very early Tom Cruise.
This is Spinal Tap is also not to be confused with This Is It, the film of Michael Jackson's final tour, or tour that was meant to be, just because of the title, but also because of the format. Potential confusion, not to be confused with that.
Yeah, I could see that for sure.
Yeah, and speaking of more musician movies, this is also not to be confused with the recent film This Is Me Now, which is Jennifer Lopez's movie. And I'm not sure if it got an official release. Perhaps that is on the docket. But I had heard about this. I think it's also what she titled her tour, which has since been canceled to my knowledge.
Oh, that's right. I did hear about that.
I think she's going through a tough time.
Okay.
But yes, this film is not to be confused with any of those that we have just mentioned. This is Spinal Tap.
Yes. The 1984 Rob Reiner directed film.
Mockumentary.
Yeah, mockumentary film. Do we want to get into what this movie's about?
Sure.
What is this movie about?
Yeah, what is this movie? I feel like I asked that a lot. Well, this is Spinal Tap, follows the eponymous British hard rock band. We've got David St. Hubbins on lead vocals and guitar, Nigel Tufnell on lead guitar, Derek Smalls on bass, Viv Savage on keyboards, and Mick Shrimpton, for the time being, on drums. Commercial director Marty DeBurgi is helming this documentary, one that meets the band as they arrive in the States for a tour in support of their upcoming record, Smell the Glove. At first, morale is quite high amongst the hard-rocking quintet and the film crew that follows them around. But as their tour wears on, the band is confronted with a slew of roadblocks: an unsupportive label, low concert turnout, canceled shows, a Yoko Ono-style presence that moves in on the band's manager, malfunctioning stage eggs. These are all things that test the bonds that have kept this band together and rocking through several eras of music. Will they come out of this experience stronger, or will they just come apart? This is Spinal Tap.
So this movie, I mean, Emilio, you and I are the two here who have seen it before. And this movie has a very, very special place in my life as someone who is a film lover and a musician and a lover of comedy too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I first saw this movie 15 years ago, almost to the day. I haven't pinpointed the exact date yet, but it was June 2009 that I saw it.
Gotcha.
I was 12 years old at the time. And I mean, I have to figure it out. The day we're recording this could be the 15th anniversary.
Let's just say it is.
Okay, let's say for the sake of ceremony that it is the 15th anniversary of me watching this film.
Happy 15th anniversary, Julian.
Thank you. And the year was 2009. That year was the 25th anniversary of the film coming out. It was a great year to watch it because the band reunited for the 25th anniversary.
That's correct.
They went on a small tour. They were recording promotional videos in character. And that same fall, Michael McKean appeared on Broadway in a play called Superior Donuts, which is a Tracy Letts play. Quite a good experience, if I remember correctly. And so my parents took me to see that, and I was just, getting to see one of the guys from Spinal Tap the same year that I had first seen the movie was heavenly.
Live and in the flesh. That's very cool. I can
Live
understand
and in
that.
the flesh. The following year, I visited the UK for the first time, and the top destination on my list of places I wanted to go was Stonehenge.
Love that.
Makes sense.
I just also one of the not to be confused with that I wrote down that I didn't use was "This is 40." I was like, I don't need to do it, but now I'm realizing that it is the 40th anniversary of this movie this year.
Yeah,
so
this
now I
is
feel like I
40.
need to go do "This is 40," not to be confused with "This is 40."
That's right.
Yeah,
or
sometime
at least
this year.
Sometime this year, yeah.
It's March 2nd, 1984. It
Ah,
passed.
so we've already
so
passed
it's
it.
Still
Yeah.
40th year.
Yeah.
Yeah, still the 40th. Widely agreed to be one of the greatest films of 1984 when it came out. And as we record this, there is a sequel in production that Rob Reiner is directing. And the original cast is all returning with cameos slated for talents such as Paul McCartney, Elton John, and Questlove.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah, some of whom were around. Well, they were all alive then, but I mean, Paul McCartney, Elton John, they were prominent enough to have been in the movie, but Questlove, he's the one who's emerged into the time since.
Right.
I think, Questlove is kind of like a must-have in any like music documentary situation these days.
Yeah.
But
yeah, he's a big name in that now.
Yeah.
he's the kind of person who's equally game for parody as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. One thing that jumps out when we first start talking about this movie is its unusual format.
Yeah.
There are a lot of proto mockumentaries that came up, but I think some that have personal significance for me would be the two Woody Allen films, Take the Money and Run and Zelig. And I think another film that we should also make a little bit of time for is A Hard Day's Night.
Oh,
Yeah.
Without that film's influence and its very playful take on myth building of a band that is sort of a parallel track to the existing band.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting film to have in conversation with this is Spinal Tap. And there's one other one that, for me personally, I love and I just want to shout out, which is Albert Brooks's film Real Life, which came out about 5 years before.
So good.
So good.
I love them.
I love Real Life too. I'm so glad you've seen it.
Have you seen Real Life, Julian?
No, and I have
you
to-
would love it.
You would love it.
I'll
Yes.
take your word for it. I have to admit, as many movies as I watch, I have a serious blind spot with Albert Brooks.
Oh,
I
movies.
would
You
say
gotta-
that
gotta get on that.
I have as well in the past, and in the last year or so, I've been trying to catch up. Some of his films I've really enjoyed, some I've liked less, but that one I think is my favorite so far.
I think Real Life is a really great example, I think, of what he does really well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I
And I
would
also
agree
think
with
that movie is, I think it's extremely modern in its style of comedy. It's like legit cringe humor.
Absolutely. And particularly since like we have now entered in the past few decades a world of reality television just like overtaking our culture.
Yeah.
And so I think that is like far before,
Right.
anything like reality television really takes off, but it really taps into something that eventually just becomes
Just a normal part of our
Exactly.
daily life. Yeah. And in researching for this conversation, I came to read that Real Life is co-written by Harry Shearer.
I mean,
perfect.
that makes sense. Rob Reiner and Albert Brooks are like childhood friends. Like
Yep.
they go way back.
They're
and-
both children of entertainment legends.
Established comedians.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it makes sense that Harry Shearer would also like kind of be in their similar circle. And then I think also we need to talk a little bit about the Monkees. Like you mentioned,
Oh,
the Hard
yeah.
Day's Night. The Monkees are also like a fictional band that becomes a real band
Totally.
based on their success in fiction.
Right?
Their show is not mockumentary style, but
Right.
I think it is kind of adjacent to that.
Yeah.
And even if not always in filmic form, I mean, it makes me think a lot of the way artists would build their legend in some form of publicity. Like I just started thinking about David Bowie with all of his different personas, which, sometimes spilled into movies. As you were talking about the Monkees, I just thought about the Sex Pistols too, which is a band that was like organized by a manager, I guess ostensibly more for a publicity purpose, but had a very real influence on music.
Right.
It's not to put down the inception of the band, but it's just, their inception is just, it doesn't have the punkness about it that a lot of people might want to assume it does.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I would say though that this is kind of ground zero for how
Absolutely.
we would or what we would associate as being a mockumentary.
Absolutely.
Really with this film. Yeah.
And then Christopher Guest goes on from this film to make an entire career out of that genre.
right.
Yeah, and Christopher Guest is talented in many numerous ways, but yeah, I feel like he is the first name in mockumentary films.
Yeah.
Mockumentaries in general, I mean, they are much more abundant now than they were in 1984.
For sure.
And I love that the movie that blazed the trail for all of these mockumentaries to come happens to be a music movie too.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
just like I'm sure this is true for all of us in one form or another, that as someone who loves both music and movies, I love seeing the crossover, but I've also felt frustration in the past when people really try to separate them as two lanes. I've never really seen them as separate.
Yeah.
I really do deeply appreciate the crossover of these forms of art, but also that, the presence of music and the music world in movies can be influential to the film world too.
Absolutely.
And I think Spinal Tap is such a great case of that. And because of the influence of Spinal Tap, we have all these things that affect people who aren't even that invested in music. Shows like The Office or Parks and Recreation.
I mean, one thing that I had wanted to mention is you said how mockumentaries really are very prevalent in our current world. And we have the mockumentary sitcom. And The Office is, I think, the first one most people think of. Parks and Rec is kind of directly comes out of The Office. Abbott Elementary is the big one now. That's another kind of mockumentary style sitcom. I imagine we're going to keep getting these because they're incredibly successful. All these three shows, and I'm sure there's others, but these three off the top of my head are incredibly successful, award winning. So why stop now? Like, I'm sure they're just going to keep coming.
There's also What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, What We Do in the Shadows is another really good example, both the film and the television show.
Yeah. Exactly. And one edge that franchise has is that it's fantastical too.
Yeah.
Nice.
Which is something that distinguishes it from a lot of these others.
Are you guys familiar with a mockumentary called Man Bites Dog?
I've heard of that.
Yes, that's a French movie.
It is a French movie.
About like a hitman?
Not a hitman, a serial killer.
A serial killer.
When you brought up What We Do in the Shadows, it seemed like a slight pull in a darker direction, and that might be the darkest mockumentary I've ever seen.
Okay.
I don't know if I would totally recommend it, but it is it's an experience.
Yeah, and that's like, humanizing, showing in a slice of life format these people who you just would never think to portray that way otherwise.
Right. But, one of the things that movie does, and I think some of these other shows do, that breaking of the fourth wall, that idea that it is this audience interrogation tactic. You are seeing people that know that they're being filmed, right? Mm-hmm. That's something that you definitely understand with documentary. But it's particularly strong, I think, with mockumentaries.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing that Dougie pointed out is that something that this mockumentary does not do is the straight-to-camera confessional that I think a lot of these others go on that becomes a major point. He was like, no one gymmed the camera in this movie.
Yeah, that's very true.
It's like you get Rob Reiner's character interviewing Spinal Tap a lot. I think that's the closest you get to the confessional, but I don't think at any point you have Nigel sitting down, going straight into the camera talking. It's normally, in some other context, whereas all of these other mockumentaries, film, television, they have that kind of you're in the confessional booth kind of moment.
Right. I actually think there are a couple moments where the characters do acknowledge the camera, but usually it's for more myth building.
Yeah.
I remember that moment where they're stuck under the theater or whatever and they're lost. I think Nigel does a thing where he stares at the camera and kind of goes like, wow. Exactly. Yeah, right. Whereas I think the gymming the camera is, I think, meant to create a different type of humor. It's meant to be this, what are we doing here?
Exactly.
Thing, and that's quite the opposite of what Nigel's doing.
It's known about Spinal Tap that it was drawing from existing music documentaries of that time, things like The Last Waltz or Gimme Shelter or Don't Look Back or Led Zeppelin's film The Song Remains the Same.
Song Remains the Same, yeah.
And I think I've seen some of those. I haven't seen all of them, but from what I do gather, it's always you get people are being interviewed directly, but their eyes are not facing the camera.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And Spinal Tap sticks true to that, except for those occasional moments. There are some moments where if you think about the camera logic in the settings where they are, it doesn't quite make sense, but that's why it's funny.
They
Totally.
acknowledge that a little bit in the commentary.
Yeah, the infrared cameras.
Yeah,
Yes.
sometimes they'll be like,
Yep.
I forget what scene it is that they're like, it's surprising that we even invited Marty in for this because normally, this would be a band-only meeting or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The scene where I was thinking about it was actually in the limo ride scene where you have on one side of that, you do have Marty holding the camera from the front seat, but then you also have a camera angle shown from inside the lounge area of the limo where the band is conversing with their manager.
That's right. And you don't really see a cameraman. You're
Right. It's, in theory, you should see a cameraman pointing back from Marty DeBurgi's handheld, but you don't. It's one of those infrared cameras in there too. But yeah, so then this is a pretty good setup for a question that you posed, Madeline.
Yes. So we talked a little bit about how this is a trailblazing film for the mockumentary, but this film is also really trailblazing for improv comedy, which has been around for a little while at this point, but it really brings it to a wider audience in the same way that it brings the mockumentary style to a wider audience. And like we said, Christopher Guest goes on to explore mockumentary, but also improv comedy and more of his own films. So my question for you guys is, how does this film kind of fit into the state of comedy at this time in 1984? And then how do we see this film influence comedy and specifically improv comedy, in the following decades and in our current time? And Julian, I know you're a big comedy fan, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, but obviously yours as well, Emilio.
Well, now I'm immediately thinking to some of the backstory of the film's making. For research for this episode, listeners, get out your punch cards. I dug up 2 episodes of Mark Maron's WTF.
I also listened to half of one.
See, so it's not just me this time. That gives me some comfort. Thank you, Madeline. But so I listened specifically to Mark Maron's interviews with Michael McKean, who plays David St. Hubbins, and Rob Reiner, the director of the film. They, like Michael McKean, Harry Shearer, Christopher Guest, and Rob Reiner were all friends who had worked together. They had originally conceived of Spinal Tap as a band when they were working on a television pilot in the late 1970s for something that was simply called the TV show.
Yeah.
And they conceived of the band largely through improvisation, also just a sincere appreciation of music. Michael McKean and Christopher Guest had always been musicians. I think they had met in college and bonded over music then. And so, their musical talents, in the vein maybe of another comedian like Steve Martin, were always in tandem with their performance careers.
Yeah, especially early in their careers.
Yeah.
I listened to an interview with Christopher Guest where he talked about the very moment that he got inspiration for the idea of a heavy metal band that was a little aloof. And he said he was in the lobby of a hotel in 1974 and a hard rock band was checking in, and the road manager asked one of the guys, he said, "Hey, where's your bass?" And the bass player was like, "What do you mean?" And the road manager's like, "You're the bass player. Where's your bass?" And they had this whole who's on first type thing. It just made him laugh so much that the bass player didn't even know where his bass was. That was the seed, I guess, for it to develop into a larger skit and eventually this film.
After they started to develop it a little more, they knew it couldn't be written as a screenplay. It had to be improvised. So they wrote an outline, and they wrote a 4 or 5 page history of the band, but they never wrote a script. And so the way that they shopped the movie around was that Rob Reiner filmed a treatment, like a few minute long treatment of the subject matter that eventually made its way to Norman Lear, who he knew from All in the Family, from having starred on the show.
Yeah.
And Norman Lear, who was affiliated with Embassy Pictures at the time, then brought the film into production. And so the improvisation, true to form, really was an organic aspect of the film's making. I don't think that they were all trying to... They were all saying to themselves, we're going to blaze a new trail in comedy. They were just kind of doing what felt right to them.
Yeah.
Other than maybe some of these other mockumentary examples that we've mentioned. Yeah, it's not that prominent, but after This Is Spinal Tap, it does become much more prominent on screen. You have a lot more of these movies and productions, not just Christopher Guest things, where improvisation is emphasized. It's really integral to the process. In those Mark Maron episodes too, another thing that came up in both of them was Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
As being a show that is, as they call it, retro-scripted, where, they have outlines, but most of the dialogue is improvised on set. And the finished products that you see are trimmed down significantly from what is filmed on the set. And that, I mean, I don't know if Larry David is really thinking directly of Spinal Tap in conceiving of all of that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
It's like a butterfly effect thing.
Yeah.
You know,
totally.
that movie came along and then kind of shifted things one way or the other. And then, you know, who knows what its influence has led to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just to set the scene a little bit, this is 1984. This decade and the decade prior are really big for improv comedy in the U.S. It's in 1959 is when Second City is founded, one of the longest running and most well-known improv comedy theaters in Chicago. SNL, which is not necessarily improv, but sketch comedy primarily, starts in 1975 with many of its original members coming out of Second City. The Groundlings in LA is founded in the early 70s. Improv Olympic is founded in 81, which eventually leads to the founding of UCB here in New York in more of like the late 90s, early 2000s. Apparently, Rob Reiner himself founded an improv comedy troupe when he was a student at UCLA. I think he said that on WTF. I did listen that far, at least. So this is a really big time for improv comedy, but it's so funny because I was looking and I was like, okay, which of these like improv comedy troupes do these guys come from? And none of them, as far as I could tell. So I think that's very interesting that it's just like, it's in the ether at this time period. And it's not like these guys are necessarily trained in improv comedy. They're not coming out of Second City. I know several of them go on to be on SNL eventually, but they're not in this time period yet.
Well, Michael McKean was like 10 years later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was at that time the
because
oldest.
he was the oldest until Leslie Jones.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to answer your question with a personal story, if you
I would
don't
love that.
mind.
Go ahead.
When I was 18, I took a summer camp course dedicated to screenwriting. And I put together a kind of short 25-page kind of screenplay, I guess. And one of the members of the judging committee was Harold Ramis.
Oh, wow.
You know, he's a big name in Chicago comedy. He's a huge name in comedy in general. And I pitched this screenplay that I was kind of the mastermind behind amongst in this group. And this screenplay was specifically a mockumentary.
Oh, cool.
And it was about a guy who was just a bullshit artist on the street who would just convince random passerbys that he was working for a nonprofit that was raising money for any number of charity causes. And he would just convince them to give him money for this fictional charity cause. And that was how he was making a living.
Is this Saul Goodman?
I was just going to say, because, you know, Michael McKean appears on Better Call Saul prominently.
Well,
continue.
And the whole idea about this screenplay was that he would end up coming face to face with somebody who actually does this for a real charity. And it was about the moral quandary that he now found himself when he was faced with somebody who actually had his heart in the right place.
It sounds great.
Yeah. Well, you know who didn't like it?
Harold Ramis.
Harold Ramis. But I will say this, he had the most enthusiastic feedback for my script. So I'm actually going to say that it did something to him that other scripts didn't do.
Okay.
And you know what? It was his first nitpick about this was that it was a mockumentary. I remember he was like, no mockumentary. No. He said it very specifically. And I find it interesting that 1984, the biggest film of that year was a Harold Ramis co-written film called Ghostbusters.
I was like, this is Ghostbusters year. Wow.
This is the Ghostbusters year.
Interesting.
And so I find it sort of interesting that what was also very popular, I would argue more popular in the moment, was more scripted comedy.
Yeah.
But Harold Ramis came out of the SCTV Second City scene.
Totally.
And so he does have a background in improv.
Yeah.
And so I think for him and for a lot of people that were making successful comedies at the time, the idea of improv was more of an outgrowth of scripted comedy as opposed to the other way around.
I'm also just thinking about the time period of when you would have been doing this. This is at least pre-American Office, right? Is this
around that time? It was 2005.
So it doesn't really take off.
That's true.
You know, the mockumentary style is making a comeback right
Harold
around
Ramis
that time.
didn't have a chance to see that and weigh in. That's true. Maybe if he had seen that, he would have had a little bit more love for my
I mean, you know, the Office, the whole run was in his lifetime. So maybe, you know, maybe just right after that happened, he started to change his mind.
That's true. He was a very nice guy, by the way.
Yeah.
I talked to him and I told him that I loved Analyze This, and he was very surprised that I liked Analyze This.
He was like, that one?
Yeah, it was that one. But I stand by that. Analyze This, fantastic film.
Interesting. Haven't seen it. But you mentioned SCTV, and like, well, some people from SCTV wind up in Christopher Guest movies that come later on. People
That's
like
true.
Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara, who then go on to famously star in Schitt's Creek just a few years ago, which is a scripted show, but that's one I think a lot of the appeal exists because of their famous improvised works.
Right. Yeah. And the relationship that audiences have with those actors being so gifted in that like realm.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the scriptedness of that show couldn't work without their natural chemistry, which we know because of things like Waiting for Guffman or A Mighty Wind.
Best in Show. Yeah.
Best in Show. Yeah.
Yeah, I also just wanted to say, I mean, we've talked about improv comedy, but there are a lot of other forms of improv as well. And, you know, in addition to Christopher Guest, another name that comes up a lot in improvised film is Robert Altman. And we talked Nashville earlier in this very cycle. Obviously, Nashville predates This Is Spinal Tap. They're very different movies in a lot of ways, but Nashville is also a majorly improvised film. Why I think part of the difference is that in a film like Nashville, I feel like a lot of the time the improv is partially there to further develop the characters.
That's true.
Whereas the improv in Spinal Tap is more focused on the comedic beats, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Even in listening to them speak about how they put this movie together, that a lot of it was based on what's funny, what's landing, and roll with that.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I'm sure that you guys are aware of that I heard a lot is that there are like 50 hours of footage.
Yeah.
That they basically, Rob Reiner said he basically had to create the film and like write the film on the cutting room floor.
Sure.
Because he had to sift through all of this to get to the gold that ends up being what, an 82, 83 minute movie.
Yeah. Which is very typical of documentary style filmmaking.
Yeah, and also like other mockumentaries too often have that very lean runtime.
Yeah.
Like no more than 90 minutes. But we were talking about like the humor in the film, but I think what's part of why Spinal Tap works so well as it does is because there is something very sincere about it too.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Like in the Michael McKean WTF interview, he was saying that they couldn't have made the movie if they didn't sincerely love rock and roll. Yeah. And they also couldn't have made the movie if they didn't love Fools. And he cited, he cited Laurel and Hardy as like classic Fools, where it's like, yeah, they're goofy, but you know, it's a sincerely loved and appreciated thing.
Can I say that I've been to the Museum of Laurel and Hardy, which I believe is in Alabama. And the only reason I went there is because I was on a road trip with my parents and they saw a billboard for the Museum of Laurel and Hardy. This was not on our itinerary. And they pulled off the highway so that we could go to the Museum of Laurel and Hardy.
And how was that experience?
I have very little memory of it because I was asleep and then woke up at the Museum of Laurel and Hardy.
Like, who are these people? And why is there a museum in their name?
I remember it being very small and just kind of thrown together, but I think very charming.
Yeah. I was going to say, too, Michael McKean had a very entrenched relationship with viewers because he was Lenny of Lenny and Squiggy from Laverne and Shirley. And that is a classic Fool character himself.
Yeah.
You know, that's well-trodden territory for him and also for viewers. Like there is a relationship that he has with people that he's kind of a goofball.
Yeah, and interestingly, a lot of the people in the movie, be it Michael McKean or Christopher Guest or Harry Shearer, these are people who can separate their funny selves from their serious selves pretty clearly. And it makes me think of other people. I mean, we already mentioned Saul Goodman. It makes me think of someone like Bob Odenkirk, too, who is very, very funny, but a total professional about being a comedian.
Yeah, I mean, I'm watching Better Call Saul for the first time currently. I'm like, I think good. I'm towards the end of season 2 at this time. It's so interesting to watch that show and then like go watch this movie because of Michael McKean specifically. It's like he's almost unrecognizable from like one to the other.
Definitely.
But he does both so effectively.
I think I admittedly had a little bit of preparation for his role as Chuck McGill because it reminded me a lot of his role in that play Superior Donuts, which is a pretty like it's not a comedic character. Funny things happen in that play, but it really is like a stone cold serious character.
Got it.
But now just talking about walking this line of the serious and the funny in films such as Spinal Tap, I'm going to pose a question that I came up with for this convo now too, which is just about how one of the great strengths of the movie is its realistic insight about the music industry.
Yeah.
You know, both by commenting on what influenced it, things that had already happened by the time it was made, and also very presciently foreshadowing some things that would happen in years that came after. You know, this film is like a flashpoint, not just for cinephiles, but for a lot of musicians too. And so what scenes or aspects of the movie really strike you with their prescience, their insight? I have a bunch myself, but I want to put it to you both first.
One of the things I love about this movie is that it's not just about the band. And
Right.
it's
Yeah.
something that you see in Nashville too. It's a story whose scope is wide enough to incorporate a lot of the more peripheral people. So you get the band's manager, Ian
Faith.
thank you. You get the hostess with the mostest, right? Bobby Fleckman. You
Hi.
get the exactly. You know, you get this like kind of wacky promoter,
Artie
also
Fufkin.
like exactly
Yeah.
right, played by Paul Schaefer.
Yeah.
of David Letterman's World's Most Dangerous Band. Even people like, you know, Bruno Kirby, the limo driver,
Yeah.
which felt a lot like a callback to Nashville in some ways.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
But I love that you can see how a lot of these artists are coddled. And you also see how just below the surface, there is a lot of knowing that we're propping these people up
Yeah,
purely because there's monetary value at the end of this.
absolutely.
It's not because people really think that their shit doesn't stink. I love that. And I think that that's something that is really timeless. It's not just about music. It's about human nature in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah, I was thinking about their, issues with their manager Ian, in contrast to Mo Better Blues and the issues that Bleak has with Spike Lee's manager character Giant. And it's almost like the relationships are reversed a little bit, meaning that in Mo Better Blues, Giant wasn't a very good manager, but Bleak was very devoted to him. Whereas in this film, I feel like generally Ian is a pretty good manager.
He's awesome.
And they don't appreciate him
That's
at
true.
all
Yeah. Yep.
because they're so in their own world.
He really is trying very hard a lot of
Yeah.
the movie. Although in the audio commentary they claim that, he was like,
that's true.
he was always trying to two-time them.
Right,
And he was
right.
like, there was always like some kind of card he wasn't showing.
Right. Because we're talking about him right now. I just want to take just a second to appreciate that actor.
Oh, yeah.
He's a real standout in this movie. I think it's a real skill to act practical because that's all he is throughout the movie.
Yeah.
He's practical at every step, but still be so freaking funny.
Totally.
Yeah.
He's a delight to watch.
Yeah.
He's so good.
This actor is named Tony Hendra, and he, he's no longer with us. I mean, if you look on his Wikipedia page, sadly, his career ended pretty ignominiously. I'm not going to get into those details now, but he had come up in England in the 1960s, and I think that he was at Cambridge at the same time as Graham Chapman and John Cleese from Monty Python, and
okay.
had worked with them in the Footlights Ensemble, which was the comedy troupe at Cambridge at the time. Like, I think a lot of Monty Python and the Holy Grail, first because that and Spinal Tap are both short, like around 90-minute long or less movies that are just so chock full of jokes that you can see them numerous times and still miss things.
And there's a lot of self-referential stuff
Exactly.
in the Holy Grail.
Yeah, but also because those are movies made by people who were established at that time, but were left with resources to do something basically in like a pretty scrappy way.
Totally.
Both films made with relatively low budgets that developed huge cult followings. And I mean, it's Monty Python. I mean, it's sketch comedy. It's not improvised in the same way. But there's just, there's a certain kind of satire where it is really, it's funny because the people making it love what they are engaging with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually made a list of different things that happen in the movie that are somehow referential either to things that had happened already by that time or things that would come to be in years after the film. That skull prop on the stage, I immediately thought of
yeah.
Iron Maiden.
Iron Maiden.
100%.
Yeah, who were a fresh new band at the time this movie was being made. Very on the mark there. Megadeth was a new band at this time too, and they have a mascot like that as well, Big Rattlehead.
Yep.
But then thinking about the gradual change of style that happens with Spinal Tap, because at the time that the film is set, they've been together for like 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
a big point about this. one
Yeah,
too.
me too.
Yeah, so they I was trying to find real life parallels of that for bands that are together that long and go from being well, this kind of free love psychedelic band in the 60s to being something different in the 80s. And the one I thought of was actually Jefferson Airplane.
Oh, great.
Which they didn't become a metal band, but they started off as that kind of psychedelic 60s band and eventually evolved into, well, Starship, this fully minted pop band.
One that I thought of was Fleetwood Mac. How they transitioned away from being more of like a blues rock vibe to being more radio-friendly pop rock.
It's true. Now that I'm thinking about it, Pink Floyd is another one.
Yeah, Pink Floyd would
be one.
Sure.
I was also thinking of the Bee Gees because their sound really evolved too.
Yeah.
They were not like the disco kings when they first started, that they eventually became. You know?
Even like the Beach Boys also are another one that like they have a huge evolution.
I was going to say the Beastie Boys. They started off as a punk band that transitioned into hip hop. Also, Pantera started as a hair metal band that eventually shifted more towards like a grungy t-shirt and jeans look that played more like groove-based metal. Mm-hmm. And then more recently and a little differently, but Radiohead. I mean, they were a band that started as like kind of an alt-rock band that I think incorporated so many more electronic elements. And their sound between the Bends and Amnesiac or Kid A, like they sound like very different bands. So
that's true.
Musicians naturally are going to evolve, but also this idea of chasing the popular sound, I think is definitely referenced in this movie in a way that I think is kind of funny, but also kind of loving.
Yeah, that's ultimately the point that I wanted to make is that we see clips of their previous musical phases, like their Flower Power hit, which is Listen to the Flower People. And it definitely makes a statement about this band changing with the tides and perhaps intentionally following the trends. It makes me feel like they might go grunge at some point.
If they hang around long enough.
They have been around long enough and they never went grunge, so
I guess
maybe
so.
not.
Maybe not in our reality, but maybe in theirs.
Perhaps.
That's true.
Yeah, I have to say too that the scene where they play Listen to the Flower People, that's the production values of that old TV clip are perfect.
Oh, they're
I love it.
It's
I love
so
the
funny.
like the go-go dancer.
Also that the sitar plays, there's no sitar on camera. But also what Derek Smalls, the Harry Shearer character, does to the camera, just shh.
Yes.
And then mouthing I love you.
Quite
And then another band that has a lot of different phases. It's a band that you and I love, Julian, is Sparks.
Yes.
And I thought a lot about the Sparks Brothers documentary by Edgar Wright while watching this movie, although obviously very different in a lot of ways. And Sparks, I think, always have a very definitive sound that is so Sparks. Like they don't sound like anybody else at any point in their career. But they also do have these different phases as they go through their 50-year discography.
Right. And they're also a band that, was criminally underrated, and they probably still are for such a long time. And just now, because of that Edgar Wright documentary and their other film, Annette, are finally getting some more of the publicity they've deserved for so long. Mm-hmm. Another movie I thought about a ton while watching Spinal Tap, and this is a connection that many other people have made before, was the documentary about the band Anvil, which
I'm not familiar with it.
Oh, you've got to check it out.
Okay.
That has a bit of a admittedly redundant title, but it's called Anvil, the Story of Anvil. It came out in 2009, and many people have deemed this movie to be the real life Spinal Tap.
Oh, okay.
Also, funny fact about that movie, the drummer of that band is named Rob Reiner. Rob spelled with two B's. I guess for distinction.
For distinction, for sure.
And that movie, like, if you watch it, I mean, they go through a lot of similar ups and downs to Spinal Tap, and it's all real.
Yeah.
But then to go back to some of these other real life references in Spinal Tap. So there's a few things, not very many, but there's a few things from music history up to that point that are directly, tangibly referenced in the movie. One of them is the Beatles' White Album. Because of what happens to Smell the Glove, the record cover. Then just as well, even though they don't say John and Yoko, it's implied that Janine is a Yoko-like figure.
Totally. Although justice for Yoko. I don't know justice for Janine. You could argue either way, but justice for Yoko.
Yeah. I have to say, too, that
we have the Get Back documentary to broaden, I think, the perspective on Yoko.
So there's that, and there's also, there's a clip where David St. Hubbins says this could be our last waltz.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And so, that's a pretty fresh movie at this time, too. And ultimately, it doesn't become their last waltz, which is good. Not that the last waltz isn't a great experience, but it's a farewell in a way that This Is Spinal Tap was not.
Yeah, and Rob Reiner says that Marty DiBergi is like, just Martin Scorsese, basically. Yeah. Scorsese was the major influence for that character.
Yeah, and,
I love it.
Scorsese, too, is like someone who, as much as his narrative fiction films are very great efforts in their own right. He has a robust career as not just a documentarian, but a music documentarian.
That's true. I would say Spike Lee as well. We talked about him last week. He's got a very prolific documentary output too.
Absolutely. I think this was an intentional reference, that the whole Hello Cleveland scene where they're stuck in the hallways of a venue where they're playing in Cleveland and can't find their way to the stage was inspired by something that happened to Tom Petty.
Yeah.
But then after the movie came out, there are a lot of musicians who have attested to similar stories in their real lives.
Yeah, a short list is Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, and Ozzy Osbourne have all said this has happened to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, the video of Tom Petty, did you look that up? Because I did.
Not.
It's funny. It's not very long, but you can find at least a short clip of it on TikTok where Tom Petty is wandering around kind of the basement of some arena that he can't find the stage, and he ends up on a tennis court.
Yeah.
I think it's also implied that maybe he and his band were not fully sober at this point, and that may have added to the difficulty.
Yeah, that's very true. Can I mention one thing?
Yeah.
Rewatching This Is Spinal Tap, I love this movie. We talked about it very briefly, but The Fugitive.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's that one scene. It's kind of a throwaway scene after Richard Kimball jumps off the dam.
Yeah.
There's a scene where Gerard, Cosmo, and one of the other U.S. Marshals, they're stuck in the dam and they're running around and they're accusing one another of pointing them in the wrong direction. Yes. And I could not help but think that is their Spinal Tap moment.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe intentionally.
I want to believe it because it's very funny and it seems like this very odd decision, but it's just great.
Yeah.
One other scene I really enjoy is when Nigel is putting together that sandwich backstage.
He just keeps folding.
Fantastic.
Issues with the writer, which, I mean, I don't know if this was intentional, but it makes me think of that notorious Van Halen story.
The brown M&Ms.
Yeah, requesting specific M&M colors. I remember in high school, I read the autobiography of Lemmy Kilmister from Motorhead. And I think, there got to a point where it was 1984 and he talks inevitably about Spinal Tap and he says something like, these guys had no idea how accurate they were being. Yeah. And then points to that scene as the one where it was just like that was where he was convinced.
I love how he folds the meat in.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. I think Lemmy is one of many musicians that has felt that way about this movie.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, it hits really close to home.
Yeah, I believe it was on Wikipedia where I saw that The Edge said that he wept when he saw this film because of how accurate it was.
But also in the Wikipedia entry too, Chris France, the drummer of Talking Heads, mentions that he saw that movie and he was like, okay, I can't take myself seriously anymore.
Yeah.
Which is funny because this movie comes out the same year as Stop Making Sense.
There we go.
So one other thing, this doesn't come up in the Wikipedia article or anything else that I researched, but I know this from the past, that the scene where they emerge from those seed pods on stage and Derek can't break out of his, I don't know if it was a direct inspiration, but there's a real thing that happened to Yes once. Okay. That was like that, where their drummer, Alan White, was his drum set was inside of a clamshell prop and it wouldn't open up. This was before the movie, I believe.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. Yeah, that's right. It's a seed. I think I called it an egg.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Whatever. But
I don't know. They feel very like xenomorph eggs.
They do. They definitely do. Yeah. You think a face hugger is going to just shoot right out of that?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, along with that. So now I'll mention a few things that the movie actually foreshadows. I mean, very notably, the Black Album cover. I don't remember if it was a direct reference on the band's part, but then 7 years later, Metallica released their Black Album. And, they met Spinal Tap when they were doing a tour in the early 90s and said, just paid homage to them there.
Right.
And then, another band I was thinking about quite a bit was Pearl Jam, for two specific reasons. One of them is that Pearl Jam is a band that for their first around 10 years could not hold on to a drummer. Mm. There was, quite the revolving door of drummers in that band until Matt Cameron came in.
But they were not exploding.
No. But there's
no gardening accidents?
No. Okay. But in the Pearl Jam documentary that Cameron Crowe directed, there's a montage of it that pays homage to Spinal Tap too.
Nice.
And then they got Matt Cameron and he's been there ever since. But that's one thing. The other was that when Pearl Jam boycotted Ticketmaster in the 90s, that they were left to playing at venues in places like country clubs and things like that. And if that's the right kind of setting. And of course, with the venue mishaps that happened in Spinal Tap, I had to think of that too.
Well,
Definitely.
truly ahead of their time, Pearl Jam. Thank you for boycotting Ticketmaster before it was cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The one other that I had is Aerosmith's Rockin' a Hard Place comes out the same year, which depicts Stonehenge on the cover.
Yeah.
And it's very close to the film's release. I think it's like within the same month, like a couple of weeks before or after, possibly. And apparently, like Aerosmith was legitimately like angry at the film and at Rob Reiner, saying like, "Oh, you stole this from us." And Rob Reiner's like, "This movie we have been making for the last 2 years."
Yeah. If anything, you guys stole it from us.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
You mentioned it a little bit before, Julian, that I think this movie at its core is kind of a love letter
Yeah.
to this type of artist that exists where there's a certain amount of latitude that you're given to be creative and space to be your eccentric self.
Yeah, I mean, the scene that's immediately coming to my mind right now is the airport security scene, where they allege in the commentary that's recorded around the year 2000 that Harry Shearer, as Derek Smalls says, sometimes you don't get much time to pack before you go off to the airport. There were a lot of little details I loved in that scene, like the face of the TSA officer.
I was just gonna.
She's
If you
great.
didn't say it, I was gonna say it. She looks authentically pissed.
It's like her look when she's about to ask him to open up his pants. She's like, "Okay, here we go."
Yeah.
And there's this trope in the commentary too, where they keep referring to people who appear for a moment on screen. It's like, "Oh, he's dead now."
Yeah, they're dead.
Yeah, there's a dead one.
And that TSA agent is one person who's still alive at that time.
There we go. There we go.
It is a satire inextricably. And even though on the surface level it's quite different from things like Nashville and Mo Better Blues, all of those movies are observational in ways that I think can be quite similar to each other.
Yeah.
And I'm just, thinking about where do we draw the line between satire and just straight ahead depiction with Spinal Tap. I mean, I think the only thing that really qualifies it as a satire is the fact that it's fictional in certain ways. And that, like, yes, it's funny, but a lot of the funny things about it are things that are, as we've pointed out, based on some kind of reality.
I was just going to say one thing about the satire that really jumped out to me. I mean, one of the things that I find really great about this movie is the songs.
Yeah.
Oh, the songs are so good.
The songs are great.
Yeah.
And the songs are intentionally leaning into sexual innuendo
Yeah.
in a way that has some precedence.
Yeah.
There's one example that just comes to mind, which is Big Balls by AC/DC. Are you guys familiar with that song?
No, but
No.
This is
enough said.
This to me is the quintessential exhibit A for an influence for the style of humor that Spinal Tap songs are imbued with.
Yeah.
Definitely check out Big Balls.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, to speak to the music, I think part of what's so important about the satire in this film is the fact that these actors are themselves musicians, and a lot of them had played in bands previously. And that gives them this insight to be
Right.
able to satirize this material.
Yeah. And
Strong guitar playing accuracy, by the way. in
Oh
this
yeah.
film.
Yeah.
Actually, in that initial burst of fandom that I had after first seeing the movie as like a Hanukkah or Christmas gift, later that same year, I received the Spinal Tap soundtrack album on CD.
Yeah, which is
And-
awesome.
Which is great. It is unironically great, a lot of that music.
it really
it's like,
is.
it's not just that like they're playing hard rock well. It's like there's some really inventive musical things happening in some of those
definitely.
songs.
Rock and Roll Creation,
Yeah.
jam.
Yeah.
That song
Totally.
is awesome.
Which is the song that plays during the whole Seed Pod thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Stonehenge, it's a really interesting song musically.
sure.
Yeah.
And it's
I'm sorry.
And-
It's just so silly. It's so weird.
It
This
is,
what
but
happens. No.
Yeah.
I'm with you. It's very cool, but like I
But the
can't.
visual, you can't get it out of your head.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, there's also in that song and a few others, there are like these little pieces of classical influence that are used
For
really
sure.
well, like these diminished chords. Like in Stonehenge also, I mean, you can only hear it in the album version of Listen to the Flower People, but there's like a listen, it's like a Mozart symphony, dum, bum, 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 bum.
Yeah, right. This might be a great opportunity to ask this.
Yeah.
What was your guys' favorite musical performance or concert performance in this?
Oh man.
I got one, and I've got one in particular, and then I have a backup. But I really love both of them really strongly.
They're all good.
Yeah, they're all great.
They're all great.
Honestly, they are all great, but in my heart and soul, Stonehenge is the winner.
Gotcha.
That's
Yeah.
fair.
Mine is them doing Heavy Duty because
Heavy Duty's good.
that was the moment where if I was in that audience and I heard Nigel just bust out Boccherini's Minuet, the way the band is just going in unison with that is.
Yeah.
If I was at a show and that happened, I'd be like, hell yes.
Yeah.
You know?
I like Big Bottom because
Me too.
I like their choreography.
Yeah.
I love it too. I love how all of them
Yeah.
have basses too. There's no guitars.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking the same thing. I didn't notice that the first time I watched it, and then I rewatched it so I could listen to the commentary, and I was like, wait a second.
Yep,
They
yep.
all have basses.
Yep.
Oh yeah, that was a detail I noted from all the way from years ago because like when you listen to the recording too, I mean it's very
Yeah.
bass heavy.
Yeah, there's
Clearly.
no guitar. When it gets big, it's because the keys get big.
Yeah, they really lean into the pun of that title. But
Yeah,
also
it's
speaking
awesome.
of puns in that song, how could I leave this behind?
So great last line. Also,
Yeah.
the looser the waistband, the deeper the quicksand.
Jesus.
Come on, that is
Yeah.
amazing.
And that's, I mean, as funny as it is, I mean, this is where you see some of the critical aspect of the humor too.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
like that, and also in Tonight I'm Gonna Rock You Tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, there are like the characters that they're playing in the songs can be creeps at
Oh,
times too.
totally. Well, they're
totally.
also creeps
Yeah.
as characters.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, but again, I fully believe, I mean, it is 100% played
Yeah.
for laughs, for satire,
Right.
for
Yeah.
the rock and roll excess.
Yeah.
You know, that's part of the humor.
Just now, I can't believe I'm only just thinking of this, but another thing this has to have influenced is Metalocalypse.
Okay,
Which
yeah.
I've only seen bits and pieces of. I've never watched it really in full, but you know there are similar jokes in that show too. I mean, it's it's particularly with the like sleazy song lyric protagonist thing. I mean, there's like one notable song from that show that takes it even further than Spinal Tap does.
Right.
One other song I have to shout out is Hellhole.
I love Hellhole.
Yeah.
Oh, which is unironically a great song, but part of the reason why I love that one in particular is because they really lean into the metal imagery of Hellhole.
Yes.
But also that when you look at the lyrics, they're just talking about like living in a shabby apartment. It's like
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
the
Yeah,
weather's
yeah.
filthy, the mattress sticks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Folks lend a hand in a hellhole.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so good.
I
Yeah.
also like Give Me Some Money a lot.
my
That was
God.
very catchy.
Yeah, the like skiffle band
Yeah.
era of Spinal Tap. Yeah.
Again, like the protagonist of those lyrics is a total asshole, but it's so
Oh,
funny.
totally. I
Yeah.
always felt like that was a play on the song "Money," the
Yeah.
Oh,
Motown, the early Motown hit.
Yeah.
And how a lot of the aims and ambitions of those early proto rock songs are very primal. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think is kind of interesting about Spinal Tap is that it ends on this high note.
Yeah.
At the very end, they get one little break. And I think it's very inspired that it's just like, we have a hit in Japan. And all of this just kind of comes back together.
Yeah, and there's a certain reality to that as a musician or as an artist that you just need one hit in Japan.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And I love that. I love that about the ending. And I also, to me, I kind of read it a little bit as they really do stay so blissfully ignorant, I
Yeah.
think. And in some ways, there is the pathos of the friendship that does feel very real, that feels very separate from the ignorance, but that there's something about their like buoyancy, like they're
Yeah.
not the kind of artists that are going to just crater and not become a phoenix at the end of this, because that's kind of what
Yeah.
happens at the end. To me, it read a little bit like some commentary on the nature of like artistic endeavor. Like you said,
Yeah.
all it takes is one hit. It takes one success to really feel some wind at your back.
Yeah.
But I don't know about you guys. Like, how did you guys interpret, I think, some of the way that their ignorance is portrayed and maybe how the ending plays into that?
Well, I think that is, you've already kind of made the point, but that is something that really makes them believable as artists. Maybe a little less directly related to the WTF interviews I listened for this episode, but all the time on that show, you get people who say they pursued a career in the arts because they're just like, I didn't know what else I was going to do.
Yeah,
Right.
totally.
And I was
You
thinking,
could work in a shop.
Right. Yeah. And like, well, when you posed this question, I immediately thought of the credits montage in Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
In terms of the amount of time that lasts, it's longer than you think. That credits montage is 8 minutes long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty long.
It doesn't feel like it, but it is. The clip I keep thinking of from a minor character too is when Marty DeBurgi asks Viv Savage his philosophy.
I
He's
love
just
it.
like, have a good time all the time. That's my
Yeah.
philosophy. And it just, well, of course, it makes me think of another prominent hard rock song preceding the movie that is very, very simple. It's not clever at all. But I mean, who doesn't agree when you hear "I want to rock and roll all night and party every day"?
Exactly.
Like,
100%.
who hasn't wanted to do that?
Of course,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah. I also love it because that's about the most love we get for Viv
Yeah.
in the whole film.
Yeah, justice for Viv. I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah.
he's-
Justice for Viv.
He's one of those characters who's played by a real musician. I mean, they're all real musicians, but by someone who was a working
Primarily a
musician.
musician and not
Right.
an actor. I feel like they shout him out a little bit in the commentary.
They definitely
a little
do.
bit more.
Yeah,
they give him some more love.
some love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I notice him more when I'm watching it with the commentary because I forget what song it is. Oh, I guess it would be Stonehenge. He's wearing this helmet.
I love
Oh,
it.
yeah.
I love that little note that they say. They say that he had a plate in his head and that the helmet demagnetizes it, which allows him to rock out harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like Magneto in there.
Something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
But it's-
absolutely brilliant.
I also like during, I think it's the performance of Heavy Duty when he has shock treatment gear on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you're looking for him, there's some great material with Viv too.
Totally.
I feel like even though it's only one person who says it, I feel like he kind of speaks for the whole group there in a way.
Yeah.
I'd say so too.
Totally. I mean, I was also kind of thinking about, you talk about their blissful ignorance, but it's also like they've kind of become divas
Yeah.
at
Oh,
this
yeah.
point
Oh, yeah.
because they have had a lot of success. We don't see them with this success actively.
Right.
They mention like having previously done tours where they were selling out stadiums, and now the venues that they're booking are much smaller and their shows are getting canceled. So they're on a downwards trajectory through most of the film, but they're still kind of living in this fantasy
Right.
of where they've been previously.
Which I think makes it funnier.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
helps sell some of the comedy, that there is a reason for them to think that the world truly revolves around them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not long ago, I was talking with a student about the fact that they're making a sequel to Spinal Tap. And that student was saying that, I mean, he thinks it'll work best if they're just stuck in the nostalgia for who they have been and that, they can't break out of that in the present. It'll make for a more interesting story of them as older rockers.
I mean, I'm really fascinated to see what this sequel is going to be like.
Yeah,
I
too.
really do.
It's in good hands, so I'm cautiously optimistic for it.
I think that's a great way of describing it. Yeah. Why don't we start talking about some of our favorite details? There's so
Yeah.
many. I feel
Okay,
like.
guitar playing accuracy. Not only is the guitar playing that you see in this movie accurate, Christopher Guest was actively concerned about this during production.
Yeah.
Okay.
That he was worried about the verisimilitude of his playing with what was seen on screen. And so I don't think they didn't do reshoots or anything like that, but he made sure that the footage you saw was accurate. What you saw his hands doing was what you heard.
Because Rob Reiner said that it is recorded live. They do the soundtrack after the fact.
Right.
So it wasn't even that, maybe in the original cut that they weren't playing things correctly. It was just that we've talked before with guitar accuracy. Sometimes it's the editing that lets the actor down.
Right. That's
Right.
very true.
Sometimes people are playing correctly and just the editing doesn't quite match up.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that was his major concern, is making sure that the editing is doing them justice.
A
Right.
man after our own hearts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I took notes on this as I was watching, and when you consider scenes where you can actually see fingers moving on a guitar, Nigel is by a landslide the winner
Yes, I would say
Yeah.
so too.
in guitar playing accuracy. You don't really see many close-up shots of David St. Hubbins playing, but that's because he's the lead singer.
Yeah. There's some moments I feel like Derek Smalls in Jazz Odyssey, quite
Yes.
accurate too.
I noted that as well.
I also love how the movie very accurately depicts noodling.
Yeah.
Noodling is a very real thing with guitar players, and,
yeah.
and a lot of it is very accurate on the part of Nigel.
Well, yeah, when you see him noodling in the hotel room when David is calling Janine.
That's the one I'm
Yeah.
thinking of.
Yeah, which made me think of Keith Carradine in Nashville. Yeah,
Sure.
with this, the same merits there. I think my favorite moment of Nigel's guitar playing accuracy is when he takes that solo on the flying V in the middle of the movie, where you see him, in the middle of it, he kicks another guitar that's right next to him, and then he starts rubbing a violin against it.
And starts tuning the violin.
Yeah.
I love that.
yeah.
That's a great touch.
In the commentary, they say he actually started to seriously play violin after that had been shot.
As a violin player, how did you feel about that violin playing accuracy?
I'd have to actually say that generally a violin tuning peg doesn't move that easily. You really gotta brace it a little bit more.
So maybe a strike against the general musical accuracy
The
in this
tuning accuracy.
Maybe he was putting his back into it there. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. It seemed like he was trying to do it with one hand because his other hand's kind of busy, and that seems difficult to do.
Yeah. And also just one more Nigel guitar playing note that to bridge the gap between noodling and performing in a rehearsal in the middle of the movie when they start going into Give Me Some Money.
I love that too. Yeah, that's their sound check song.
Yeah. And that's a moment where you can see that Christopher Guest is really playing there, but in like a casual way too.
Right.
Yeah.
But also doing like some pretty nice improvisation, just with the melody there. That sort of stuff.
Yeah, but then you also have the Heartbreak
Elvis.
Hotel harmonizing scene, which is a scene I really, really enjoy.
Yeah. Those are like the two theater masks. Right?
Yeah.
But also like it calls to mind earlier on when David and Nigel are being interviewed in like a diner and they start singing the first song that they wrote together.
Yeah, that's
that
fun.
I really like that song.
Yeah, that's a
Fun.
moment where it's like it doesn't even have to be funny; it's just sweet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
exactly.
And then they show those photos of them as kids, and then in the commentary, one of them says, "It looks kind of like Haley Joel Osment."
Because this would have been around
Right
that
around
time.
that time.
And The Sixth Sense was new.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of guitar playing accuracy, those are the things that really stood out to me. I don't think this is little, but it is kind of like a secondary detail to a lot of the more prominent things in the movie. But I have to shout out Moke the roadie.
Oh yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because like he's one of the things I noticed more this time than any prior time, and he is vital in certain scenes. I mean, when he picks Nigel up after he falls down.
Yep, there's that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he helps get Derek out of the seed pod. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so shout out to Moke the Roadie, who actually appears in another Rob Reiner
I was
film.
just going to say it if you didn't. He's apparently in the Reiner universe.
Yeah.
Or the Reinerverse.
Yes.
In the movie The Sure Thing, which is a movie I have seen. I don't
haven't.
remember him, but apparently he's in that movie.
Not a little detail. How have we not talked about the number 11 yet?
Oh,
That, I think, for many years, that was the first joke I thought of in this movie.
I think that's the first one I heard having not seen this movie. And apparently you can rate it up to 11 on IMDb.
Yeah, I saw
nice.
that.
I like that.
I haven't done a letterboxd entry for it yet, but they only let you do 5 stars.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
I
doesn't
can't-
quite work
I
if you
can't
go like
imagine they
5.5
did-
or
yeah,
whatever.
5.5.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, letterbox, you can do this.
Find
It's
a
a
way,
complicated
please.
algorithm.
Yeah.
How about you? And is there anything?
Well, at one point they say 37 people have been in this band.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to assume most were drummers.
I was
Yeah.
thinking that too. Like at least 30 of them were drummers.
There was
Yeah.
a bass player before Derek Smalls, too.
Okay. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, they mentioned him by name, Ronnie Pudding.
Ah,
Yeah,
Nice.
It's
Good.
kind of like these are drummers, but the Pete Best to his Ringo Starr.
Right.
Um,
I was going to say on the subject of drummers, I mean, this movie is chock full of absolutely incredible quotes, but one of them that just every time I hear it absolutely cracks me up is they're talking about their first drummer, who oddly enough is played by Ed Begley Jr. Amazing. Did not realize that until this viewing.
one who dies in a rather strange gardening accident.
Exactly.
Yes.
But I love how Nigel says that the police said that it was a crime best left unsolved. I mean, come on. That's comedic gold right there.
It- yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, that actually made me think of a few years ago. I remember hearing that Brian May had been injured in a gardening accident.
Oh, no. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Although it was, it was not mysterious, and he didn't die, thankfully.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please.
But yeah, that was a
We need
moment
to
where
protect him at all costs.
I thought of life imitating art there.
For sure.
And I have another small detail, which is not comedic, but I found interesting, which is at one point, Derek.
Yeah.
Or-
Bass
Yeah.
player?
Yes. But at one point, Derek says, we have 2 visionaries in the band. And,
true.
referring to Nigel and David. I found that very interesting because there are some theories in business about the visionary being in your business, but also you need what is often referred to as an integrator. So essentially the visionary is exactly what it sounds like. The visionary has the visions. The visionary is thinking about the big picture. The integrator is there to get the things done and to manage more of the day-to-day operations in a business.
So
And
the
this
one
is-
whose feet are on the ground.
Exactly.
doing it. Yeah.
And you don't, with this band does not have an integrator. And I think that is part of the issue. And I think a lot of bands don't have an integrator, which is why you need a good manager to be your integrator.
Yeah. That's very true.
And they don't respect their integrator.
Yeah, I think Derek describes himself as the lukewarm water. And I don't think he sees himself as an integrator.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to shout out a couple more amazing quotes in that scene of them singing Heartbreak Hotel. David says to Nigel, when he's not getting the harmonies right, he says, "It sounds like raga. Don't go raga on this one," which I think is a very funny reference to the Beatles psychedelic kind of microtonal influence that sometimes takes place in rock. Fantastic. Great inside baseball bit.
Nice. I want to talk a little bit about the Bruno Kirby limo driver too.
Love
Yeah.
any Bruno Kirby reference.
What I found interesting about that scene is that that's one moment when you get like someone who's kind of a detractor of a band, but in a different way than a lot of other people appear in the movie, where, like the band runs into all kinds of adversity, but this is just someone who's kind of plugged into a different world, or he's more of like a Rat Pack guy.
Yeah.
Totally.
They're I think it's Derek is reading the autobiography of Sammy Davis Jr.
It's a woman that's with them.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
She's the
right.
one holding the book, I think.
Yeah, and I forget exactly what the commentary is, but he's like trying to talk about the book, and they just end up closing the window to the front seat on him, and then
The divider, just
the divider.
She was basically saying Frank Sinatra was calling all the shots.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
Sammy Davis Jr. had no say in anything.
I was just going to mention really quick, there's a little mention in the movie where they, at the very end, where they talk about them being racist. And it's very possible with what we know now about Sammy Davis Jr. and how plugged in he was, I think, to issues of race, that perhaps Spinal Tap was not interested in listening to this argument that was being made that was maybe disparaging of Sammy Davis Jr.
Yeah.
So maybe that was a way that they showed that they were not... Exactly. Maybe that was their way of showing allyship. Okay, continue.
Nice. But yeah, just as well, this limo driver whose name in the movie is Tommy Pichetta starts complaining after they close the divider on him. He starts complaining to Marty DeBurgi that he thinks this whole heavy metal thing is a fad.
It's just a fad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's like one rare moment where you get someone in the movie who really is just an ordinary person who doesn't have any business investment in the music, who's just kind of saying he doesn't like it.
Yeah.
And they don't really develop it more than that, but as just as portraying something real, I like that detail as well.
Yeah, I also found it funny when they get to the Air Force Base and they're talking to Fred Willard's character, and he says something like, "I've listened to all your albums, not yours, but
The general genre of rock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just Fred Willard doing his classic nervous thing really, really well as Lieutenant Hook Stratton.
Yeah. One of the things that I think about sometimes when I watch this movie, you guys tell me, have you guys met people in your life, working musicians, where you go, this is the only vocation for you? In any other realm, you would be hopeless. But in this realm, you absolutely shine and you can make it happen.
I wouldn't go so far as to say hopeless.
Yeah, that might be a little strong, but yes, that they're really ill-equipped for basically anything else.
Yeah, I have definitely met many a person like that, and it's funny because it's kind of a chicken or the egg scenario sometimes, right? Where it's like, has this person just been a musician and been so entrenched in the world of professional music for so long that they have lost the capability to, they've lost all other life skills that could apply elsewhere?
Yeah.
Or was this always the only path for them? I think it can go either way sometimes.
I just like it though, because in that scene, he says that it's a fad, but we've seen that the musicians in Spinal Tap have been able to reinvent themselves
They're
over and over
adaptable.
again.
It's true.
And so it makes me think sometimes that while they might be people that music is really the only thing that they're going to be okay at, they are capable enough to chameleon their way into relevancy, no matter what time they're in or what era they're in.
It's true.
Yeah.
I have a few other little details I want to shout out. So we've said a little bit already about Artie Fufkin, the ineffectual promoter of the band, who leads them to their meet and greet where no one shows up, played by Paul Schaefer.
Yes, that's totally true.
Yeah, and after that, the failure that is that so-called meet and greet, I just love when he's saying, "I'm not asking, I'm telling you this. Kick my ass."
Yes, I do love that. Yeah, that's great.
And they say in the commentary that he started working on MP3s, and they kind of imply that he's part of the whole Napster thing.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I remember that now.
And they say it's like, they're like, he's a good guy, but I fear his power now. Something like that.
Right. That's wonderful.
Yeah. And then a couple other little details. So not quotes, but just things that happen in the movie. So one thing, and this actually, Rob Reiner talks a bit about this in his WTF episode, but during the scene when the band learns the news that their album is not going to be released with the original cover, you can see that both Nigel and David have cold sores on their lips.
I love that detail.
Yes.
I saw it too.
There was a bit that had been filmed for the movie that had to do with an opening band called The Dose, where they had, I think, Cherie Curry from The Runaways playing
interesting.
a member.
Okay.
The members of that band were making out with the members of Spinal Tap and gave them all cold sores.
Oh, amazing.
And so
I figured it was something like that.
Yeah, and so that had been cut from the movie, but then part of the joke there was that the only band member who didn't make out with one of them was Mick Shrimpton, the drummer, and that no one else in the band wanted to keep playing with them, but then Mick Shrimpton was like, I thought they were fine.
Yeah. I mean, I think he really walks on eggshells, knowing
Absolutely.
the fate of many a drummer in Spinal Tap. He's not going to put himself in harm's way, even if it is STDs.
It's all for naught.
Yeah,
That's true.
that's very true.
Yeah.
How about you, Madeline? Anything else?
I'm done with my list.
Oh, man.
I got 'em
I have
all.
a few more quick ones. Another quote that just cracks me up every time I hear it is when David gets off the phone with Janine and he's talking to Nigel and he says she says she can hear that I'm eating too much sugar on the phone. She says my larynx is fat. Amazing. I don't even know where that comes from, but that's incredible.
Another classic scene, one that's talked about a lot, but that we haven't shouted out yet, is when Nigel plays his little piano piece.
Yeah.
Oh,
And,
fantastic.
that just has the perfect punchline where he's talking all about the thought that's going into it. In the commentary, they say he's still working on it too at that time.
That's
and,
true.
oh, what do you call this? Lick my love pump.
Yeah. He also says something in there that I think is kind of funny, which
Yeah.
is he says D minor is the saddest key.
saddest key.
And apparently this might not actually be just full on jokes.
Yeah.
He talks about the classical influence of that piece. And apparently before equal temperament became a thing in music, there was a little bit more, I guess, variation to keys. And there is quite a bit of literature that has been published about the way that certain keys actually do strike people in very particular ways and elicit very particular emotions. There's like a pseudo-scientific existence of this, but yes, equal temperament kind of messed that up a little bit. But I do love that little detail that there might actually be a shred of possible truth to that when
Julian,
he
you
says
have
that.
perfect pitch. Do you agree that D minor is the saddest key?
I think it's a sad key. I've personally found C minor to be a little sadder.
Yeah.
All right, well, it's
so
lower.
starkly, because C major is always
So bright.
So bright.
So
that when
warm,
it goes
yeah.
minor, that it feels kind of weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking one great C minor song is Santana's Europa.
Which, great song.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
D minor to me is a little brighter, but I do see where Nigel's coming from there.
I love at the very end in the credits how David St. Hubbins talks about how he believes everything he reads, which makes him makes him a more selective human. In the internet age, I'm really wondering how that's working out for him, with all the misinformation and echo chambers and social media algorithms. That guy is probably not doing his very best.
Yeah. And just a few other small details I want to shout out. You talked about the credits. If you look carefully during the credits, there was someone, I forget his real name, but someone who was simply credited as the real Ian Faith.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone who's actually doing the management.
Yeah.
Location scouting, I'm sure, just logistical things to get the movie made.
Yeah.
And another thing too I mean, there's some really funny names throughout the movie. We've already mentioned many of them, but the head of Polymer Records, Dennis Eaton Hogg.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I just thought Eaton Hogg as a last name where it's like, something that sounds very British, but it sounds like eating a hog too at the same time.
Yeah, kind of wacky.
It just felt like one of those perfectly chosen names. I mean, I think we talked a little bit about it in Mo Better Blues that like sometimes people have these names that just weirdly work for their persona. Like I think, I don't know if I mentioned this there, but my dad used to work with a guy named Pat McLaughlin. And I was like, how is that man not a jazz guitarist?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It's like Pat Metheny, John McLaughlin.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go.
And one last thing from the commentary actually is that there's a moment where they're talking about Janine and it's implied, or not implied, it's stated during the commentary that David and Janine are basically divorced at that point. And that, she had made a little venture into children's literature and wrote a book. What was it called again? A stretch mock called Misha.
Oh, that's great. Yeah,
I just love that.
We've been talking about the commentary quite a bit, I think, throughout our conversation. But when they're at Graceland and they're at Elvis's tombstone, one of them goes, "Do you think he knew that he was dead at the time?" And then somebody else goes, "I don't think he knew he was alive." And then, good point. It's just this wonderful little classic, great improv that you treat everybody's words as if it came from the smartest person in the room.
Yeah.
And it just, I love that part.
Yeah, and you can feel that they're just doing that in the commentary too, that they're like, there's even some moments when they laugh there and you get the sense that it's real laughter.
Right.
Sure.
It's peeking out a bit.
I liked too in the commentary when they were talking about when you see the clips of the band being interviewed outside of that castle, and that Nigel allegedly had owned the castle, and also
offloaded it for $10,000.
Yeah,
which Dougie was like, I don't know, maybe that is Christopher Guest's castle because he is as Dougie said, a fancy lad.
Yeah,
Isn't
he like a baron,
exactly,
or something like that?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that.
I think he grew up in England. I'd have to look it up. I think when he talks, he doesn't have an English accent, but he has English ancestry.
Right. I think you're right.
But and also that I just now, after years of seeing this, noticed that Nigel is wearing a kilt in that scene. His legs are folded. It's a little hard to tell.
Yeah, I think he even says showing off some knee.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like when we have the scene, we go to the scene with the amps going to 11 and they mention the commentary, they should have patented that.
Yes.
Yeah, because then people stole it.
Missed opportunity right there.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, there's other things if we had all the time in the world that I would go through, but I feel like I've said all my favorites now.
Yeah, same here. Should we get into some unlikely shared universe?
Absolutely.
Well, yes, absolutely.
Who wants to go?
I could go.
Yeah,
because I
go
think
for it.
you guys have
we
the
might be
same
duking it out a little bit.
Yeah.
But go for it.
So we know that David and Nigel grew up together, but we don't really know much about Derek's backstory. As you mentioned, Julian, they previously had a different bassist. So we don't really know anything about him. And I think it's possible that maybe he is faking his British accent in order to fit in with the rest of Spinal Tap.
If he only knew.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I am going to say that he was actually born right here in New York City, as the son of two beatniks who let him just run wild as a kid.
As beatniks do.
And eventually his parents couldn't take it anymore. And they took him to Dr. Foster, a psychiatrist, who put him through the University of Minnesota's spankological protocol, which involved 8 months of continuous spanking. And the treatment worked so well that it rendered him unable to express any anger at all. Hence the pretty level-headed demeanor we see throughout him in this film. And after the spanking treatment, he leaves home. He said, clearly this is not a safe place for me. He leaves determined to make a life for himself away from his dysfunctional family and his beatnik parents. So that's when he meets up with David and Nigel, perhaps, finds a new dysfunctional family in Spinal Tap, and they played together for many years. However, after many years of debauchery with the band, Derek has a religious awakening. He suddenly craves a simpler life that he can devote fully to God. So he quits the band and moves to the Midwest to a town called Springfield, In an unnamed state, he marries a woman named Maud, and they have 2 children named Rod and Todd. And he's generally well-liked in his town, but occasionally gets under the skin of his simple-minded neighbor, a father of 3 who works at the local nuclear power plant. Also, his appearance may have changed quite drastically during this time.
I was going to say, and a lot has changed visually from him.
It's possible that his skin color has changed to complete yellow along with the entire world around him,
Just
but that
jaundice.
is irrelevant.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
exactly.
Well, to that I say oakley dokley.
Nice.
And I think this is the first intermedium, unlike the shared universe.
Yeah, I thought about going a different direction or trying to explain the switch of medium, but I kind of like just, he's a cartoon now.
Yeah.
That happens sometimes.
Well, we did,
Grease.
when we were talking about Super Ed and Booksmart, talk about the fact that B-Dog from the Airbuds universe
that's true.
actually was, turned into a human. So
Yeah.
that was an interspecies, unlike the shared universe.
Yeah.
I like the intermedium.
Yeah.
That's quite good.
But yes, this is Ned Flanders from The Simpsons.
Love it.
It was hard to choose. He voices a lot of characters.
I was going to say he
in
does.
that
Yeah,
show.
he's all over that show.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think I'll continue this with mine, which is, so we only briefly mentioned him, but Lieutenant Hook Stratton, who we meet at the Air Force Base, who shows Spinal Tap around and allows them to get their bearings and leads them to the stage. So, you get the sense that he's kind of nervous there. And maybe not that he doesn't want to be there, but, just he's kind of insecure in this environment. And let's just say that Lieutenant Hook Stratton, he has not always been this, that he has fallen back on this military life after 15 minutes of fame in the 1970s, where he was known by the stage name that he prefers to don, Mike LaFontaine. And he was on a show called What Happened?
No relation, by the way, to Vince Fontaine.
No relation to Vince Fontaine.
That we know of.
That we know of.
Okay.
But he was on a show called What Happened? And if you're wondering, well, what happened to this show, it was sadly canceled after one season when the executives said, I don't think so. And, this episode of his life that we see in This Is Spinal Tap is during a lull in his life that does not last forever, but a lull between career highlights. Eventually, he gets to return to his persona years later in a chance meeting that occurs when he he just kind of lucks into becoming the manager of a reformed folk act called the New Main Street Singers and helps them get their act together for a certain memorial concert that takes place about 20 years later.
There you go.
Do you both have this one?
I mean, definitely. This is A Mighty Wind.
That's A Mighty Wind.
Yeah.
Which I've actually not seen, but know enough about. Yeah, that's one that I'm missing.
We've seen Spinal Tap now. I think A Mighty Wind
That's next.
That's the next one for sure.
That might be my favorite Fred Willard appearance in a Christopher Guest movie, in A Mighty Wind. And, and there's a few of them, so there's some competition.
Yeah,
but
there
also
is.
A Mighty Wind, worth noting, too, that Spinal Tap has effectively a reunion in that movie.
That's true.
Where you see Christopher Guest, Michael McKean, and Harry Shearer all playing together as the Folksmen.
Yes. Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Another great movie.
Well, on that thread, we've talked just about Lieutenant Bob Hookstratton. We do see that he's a military man. He's stationed out in Colorado somewhere, it seems like. I'm just gonna roll with that. He seems like a little bit more of a salt of the earth kind of guy. He likes his easy listening, even though he says he's down with rock and roll. And in a move that might actually be one of the biggest holes to poke in the facade of these 3 American comedians being British, he describes their start time in military time, which seems to confuse them.
Very good point.
But I'm going to say this. That scene does demonstrate that Bob is quite punctual. He's well-dressed. He's got a great head of hair. And he's
Getting a little
affable.
shaggy.
A little bit shaggy, that's right. But he's quite affable too. And all these traits serve him quite well when, in a post-military career, he turns to broadcasting. As many on-air personalities do, he changes his name to Buck Laughlin and specializes in sports and personal interest stories. He's successful, but he's not really one of the big players. His on-air charisma and his fast-thinking nature is truly put to the test when he is assigned or misassigned to be the color commentator for the annual Mayflower Dog Show alongside dog expert Trevor Beckwith. In spite of the fact that Laughlin does not know anything about dogs or competitive dog shows, their telecast ends up being a source of unintentional humor for all those watching. I don't know. I'm wondering, how much do we think Buck can bench press?
I don't know.
Okay. Do you guys know this movie?
It's Best in Show.
Yeah, Best in Show.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, we both made connections to other Christopher Guest.
Exactly. I feel like it's very easy to imagine that there is a bit of shared universe there, but always fun to run it down.
One, simpler one that I can offer too for a character who only appears very briefly too is that this designer of the Stonehenge model that appears on stage at only 18 inches in height.
Yeah, a little bit of a gaffe there.
Yeah, so I mean, her career name is Polly Deutsch, but this could just be one career in the storied life of someone really known to those who truly know her as Etheline Tenenbaum.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I don't think you learn that much about her prior life in that movie. I'd have to see it again, but I just like to entertain the idea.
I like it. I'm down with that.
Yeah. I have to say, Fred Willard always used to also appear as himself on episodes of The Bachelor each season. Do you remember this?
He most certainly did, and I think it's a play on the fact that he was, because he was always color commentating some weird sport event.
Exactly. Yeah. He would do like commentating the Bachelor Bowl where they like make people play football naked or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. For those who don't know, Madeline and I have had some time in the Bachelor universe.
Yeah,
we've done it. It's a thing we've done.
Fred Willard also did it.
Yeah, he did it too.
Yeah. Speaking of Fred Willard and of music, that I remember when I listened to his WTF interview years ago that he mentioned once hearing someone tell a version of Who's on First that was actually about a rock show where the Who was on first, the Guess Who was on second, and on third was Yes.
That's funny.
And that was one time where this doesn't happen to me very often, but I was listening to that episode out in public and I just started laughing out loud.
I mean, that's I'm in.
And this is Fred Willard just retelling a joke too. He's not telling it actively, and I was still laughing.
Yeah.
As we wrap this up, one detail about the influence of this movie that I have to point out, I can't believe I forgot this earlier, but Documentary Now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Totally indebted to Spinal Tap, but also because there's a lot of musical presence in Documentary Now, probably most notably with the Blue Jean Committee, who are a parody of the Eagles, but also that the show started kind of similarly too, where it began from an SNL sketch where Fred Armisen was portraying this punk in the late 70s who happened to be a Margaret Thatcher supporter in a strange twist. But that SNL sketch was the genesis of Documentary Now.
I'm going to use that as a bit of a segue to talk about the next movie that we're going to get into. Because Documentary Now is very knowing about the influences of documentary filmmaking.
Yes.
I think they would go on record to say that the work of D.A. Pennebaker would be quite influential to them. And we are going to be talking about a D.A. Pennebaker film next week.
This is where we set up our two-shot segment, our next two-shot segment for this cycle, in which this is an interesting one because this is the first one in this cycle where we're focusing on a set of movies that concern a real public figure.
Yeah.
That figure is Bob Dylan, and as you've alluded to, Emilio, the first of those two movies we'll be looking at is Don't Look Back, the D.A. Pennebaker documentary from 1967.
Yes, and then we'll be also discussing I'm Not There. Is this the first time we will be discussing a second movie by a director that we previously covered?
Well, this will be the third because we talked a little bit about May, December.
Oh, yeah.
So definitely the third.
Definitely the third.
But yes, I'm Not There, directed by Todd Haynes, who at that point I think will be our most covered director on this podcast.
There we go.
Todd Haynes, come on our podcast.
Yeah.
Please do it. We'd love that.
Yeah.
Man. I don't know what else there's to say. Okay, this was your first time seeing...
This is my first time seeing this movie, and I've seen it twice now.
I have to say, just in reference to this being your first time seeing it, just in recording this, I don't know if I've ever seen you laugh so hard.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, even just your retellings of certain jokes, like, just crack me up and
Yeah.
make me want to rewatch it yet again. Because I watched it once in full and then once with the commentary, which breaks my brain a little bit when commentaries don't have subtitles. I, like, can't follow that well.
Yeah.
This DVD decidedly did not have subtitles, like, as a capability, which I
that's
found
true.
very
Yeah,
odd.
yeah. I think mine didn't either.
I read that was like a notable issue in releases of it over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a fantastic film. I already want to rewatch it. But I also want to go to a mighty wind so I can experience something a little bit different. Yeah, I'm really glad to have finally been initiated.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, this movie it's a total masterpiece. I think it is absolutely essential viewing,
Yes.
not just for musicians, but especially for musicians. But
Yeah.
like we've alluded to, fans of comedy, fans of improvisation. Yeah, 5-star movie all the
Well,
way.
we stopped doing this a while back, but if you were asked to rate it out of 10, the only correct answer is 11.
11.
Ooh, I like it. I like it. Guys, you can find us all on the social medias. We put a lot of work into our TikToks.
We do.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You can find us on TikTok and Instagram at Sleepless Cinematic Pod. You can also send us an email.
sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. You can also follow me individually on Letterboxd at it's just my name, Julian_Barthold.
And you can follow me at Patroness of Cats. And you can also leave us a review if you enjoy our episodes. We would love that. You can even just click a star rating and not even have to write a full review, which would also be helpful.
Yeah, helps
and
us
it's
out too.
easy.
Less is more.
Absolutely. Guys, great choice. So glad you finally saw this, Madeline.
Absolutely.
And oh, how they danced.
Good night.
Good night.